All right, guys, we've got Matthew Baltzell here with me, and I'm excited to talk to him about real estate and podcasting. But first of all, Matthew, you are in Thailand. Tell us how it's going over in Thailand.
Yeah. Oh, so first, thanks for having me, Sam. It's a pleasure. Always hopping on this podcast and good seeing you again. But I'm in Thailand right now. It's 11:41 p.m. Always a hot and murky day, but I was recently back in the States and I just got back like about 8 days ago. But it's good. It's good for sure.
So you're kind of living a lot of people's dream, working abroad in a really cool place. So before we get started on the real estate side of things, the podcasting side of things, I'm just kind of curious about you and what got you over to Thailand and how long you've been there.
For sure. So I left the United States back in 2016 to a failed attempt to move to Germany, and my visa was running out. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, where am I going to go next? So I basically wound up getting a teaching job in Thailand, moving abroad, found my future wife, got married, had a kid. Meanwhile, I'm abroad, right? Listening to podcasts, thinking about my next move. And this is, say 2000, it's like 2017 now. Multifamily is starting to pick up. You're listening to Bigger Pockets episodes. You're listening to basically any material you can consume, right? So I basically started going on Bigger Pockets, and I created, or I think in the discussion forums, I can't remember exactly how I did it, but I think I did a post. That's what I did. And I was like, hey, I want to start a digital meetup with real estate investors. It wasn't anything gangbusters, but we had about anywhere from 6 to 8 people. And one person that was interested in the actual meetup, she wasn't in the meetup, but she just was like, hey, keep me up to date with what you're kind of doing, kind of thing. I was like, all right, great. So one thing led to another. My mastermind group kind of fell through. And then she was like, hey, I like what you're doing. Let me put you in contact with somebody. And that basically led me to getting my foot into a private equity firm and working my way up, acquiring 700 units with them, and basically helping with asset management for 4 years. So I kind of did a whole roundabout way of getting into private equity in America by moving halfway around the world. But, I was able to do that, which was great. And that's kind of how I got my foot started in multifamily real estate for sure.
That's awesome, man. And it's funny because these people go to these Rod Khleif boot camps, which are awesome, by the way, or they'll go to different boot camps, or they'll hear me on a podcast and they'll hit me up and be like, how do I get started in real estate? I'm like, well, there's so much free content out there. Bigger Pockets is free. You can just go on there and learn and meet people and listen to everything that they have recorded. I mean, there's Joe Fairless podcast that's great with multifamily. There's Rod Khleif. There's my podcast, which we've interviewed some fantastic operators with really good info. So it's always interesting to me that people still don't think of podcasts and don't think to go on Bigger Pockets and just learn and put themselves out there. So you went from just kind of listening to podcasts, and then you actually started something on Bigger Pockets for free, which is awesome. I've given that advice to dozens of people, and I would say off of Bigger Pockets, when I started just going on there regularly in 2016, I've probably on the real estate side pulled off, I don't know, 15, 20 transactions just from putting myself out there, talking about deals I have, teaching
For
people how to
sure.
run cap rates, all for free. And then vice versa. I'll also looked at a lot of people's deals that they had on there
For
and tried to
sure.
buy a few. So
Yeah, I
it's all
mean,
free.
if you think about it, right? Like David Green and those guys, they always talk about like out of state investing, right? So the way I kind of thought about it is like, all right, I mean, other than my time zone per se, I could basically do everything over the internet. These guys are kind of doing stuff. Yeah, I can't walk the properties. Maybe I know somebody with boots on the ground in certain submarkets or whatever, but I was kind of trying to like think creatively outside the box, right? And so from my meetup, I remember there was a guy from San Francisco, there was a guy from Denver, and I think there was another guy from Chicago, and I can't remember where everybody else was from. But I was just like, okay, lead with value, And, that was like my main driver is like, okay, I just got to lead with value in these meetups. And when I'm reaching out to these people is to lead with value. And that's one of the things that people make a mistake very often, right? Is they say like, hey, can I pick your brain? Or, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Right. And it's like, listen, like you were just talking, right? You were like, listen, I'm so busy with all, how many units do you have right now again? You said what, 3,000?
Almost at 2,000 doors. Almost
2,000. There we go. Yeah. So you have 2,000 units, right? You're a busy man. You got a lot of money, a lot of capital asset under management. And it's like, if somebody says, hey, I want to buy you a cup of coffee or pick your brain, you're just like, listen, man, like I would love to do that, but I'm just busy from 9 to 5, sun up to sundown. And so somebody came to you and said, hey, Sam, listen, like, what is your investment criteria? Great. Let me write that down. I'm going to look for deals. Oh, I know this broker, or let me develop this relationship, or let me introduce you to this guy. Like now you are already more susceptible to reciprocate, wanting to help that person because they're leading with value. And you might be like, listen, hey, I'll help you underwrite your first deal, right? Or maybe I'll be a GP or a KP on one of your next deals, and we can go from there. And that's how people get their foot in the door. But what people want is the handheld process of do X, Y, and Z. Okay, this will happen tomorrow. And then on Tuesday, you get this. And on Wednesday, you get that. But you have to think creatively. And in a digital economy, if you're not thinking creatively, then you're not necessarily seeing results. And if you're not seeing results, then people often give up.
Yeah, man, it's crazy to me when I give people the advice of go listen to a bunch of podcasts, go to YouTube University. Like I can't teach you anything in 15 minutes, but you can listen to YouTube in your car and watch it to learn how to analyze deals. So the two people that I've added to my company in the last 3 years that have been hugely beneficial, Tien, who's our head underwriter. And so she's our partner she'll get a 20% of cut of any deal that she finds for us. So that's a lot of money. And she's made some fantastic money and been a huge asset. She went to Rod's boot camp. She got connected with me. She didn't say, hey, can I pick your brain? Hey, can you teach me something? She said, hey, I really want to do deals. Where should I look? I'm teaching myself how to analyze deals. Can you take a look at something that I've analyzed? It was a real deal. And after about, maybe it was a little bit more than 6 months, we ended up buying one of our deals with Tien. And then we bought 3 more with Tien. And then another one with Tien.
Exactly. Now you're going to go to her every single time because she's leading with value. She's bringing you deals. She's happy. You're happy. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. I mean, she started down here with her understanding. She taught herself. Then when I came in, I said, okay, well, here's what we actually need to see to make it work for our investors. She's like, oh, okay. And she figured it out. But it wasn't like I said, okay, here's the spreadsheet. Here's how you enter in a P&L. Here's how you figure out the T12 data. Yeah. I'm never going to do that. Like that's absolutely not. And then the other guy that's taking advantage of this is Calvin. So he's our intern currently, and he got connected with us through, I guess it was a friend through Rod's community. He's in the Navy down in San Diego, and he's been teaching himself, going to boot camps, YouTube, podcasts. He's like 23 years old. And I interviewed him and I was like, you're hired on the spot. Like you've already done so much work. I don't have to teach you a lot of what I would have to teach even just a regular hire. So he's interning until he's out of the Navy in August. And he was able to hit the ground running with us. So he's already helping manage investors, looking for deals. We flew him out to do due diligence on a few deals because he understood what to look for. And so I'll spend a huge amount of time with someone like that who's already taught themselves a ton. I will work harder than I would work, way harder than I'd work than someone who just comes and says, will you help me? And I'll maybe still help that person. But if they haven't taught themselves and taken that time, I'm not going to spend near as much time as I would with the Tien or the Calvin who have busted their asses to figure this stuff out, and they're already an asset. And then, of course, I'm going to bust my ass as well to help you be successful.
For sure. And I was actually just thinking of this while you were talking. I was like thinking on the fly, if people are listening to this, right, and they want to think about something that they could do, let's say they go to Whitney Sewell's podcast, LifeBridge Capital, or the Joke Fair. That's one of those basically daily podcasts, right? I would listen, create a spreadsheet of every single podcast guest that was a real estate on there. I would go to their website and then I would look at their team, right? So there might be principal, lead principal, underwriter, whatever, marketing, etc. So I would see what they have. And a lot of times with real estate, it's a good old boys club, right? So it's like these websites are archaic, they're old, they're slow, like blah, 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 blah. So I would see where I could add value to that syndicator or that capital raiser. So I'd say, hey, well, Sam, I noticed on your website, like you don't have anybody on your team for marketing. I specialize in growth hacking and running lead generations and landing pages. Here's a template of something that I've created for you. I think this could help captivate and sell your book. Oh, what? You don't have a book? Oh, by the way, I've repurposed all your podcast content episodes and I've created a 10 chapter book for you. Here's an outline. And you're like, whoa, like, who are you? Like, let me see this. Let me see this content. Like, and now you already have a foot in the door. Right. And the next thing you know, you're going to like Tian and the other gentleman, like you're giving commissions and, they do a lot of work. So you reciprocate that and you give them a share of the deal. And if somebody was bringing in more deal flow or more investors for you, then they're going to start getting shares and working their way up. And that's how they get in the industry. So that's kind of a little hack for something that I kind of thought of if they wanted to find a way to get into the industry, as opposed to, hey, let me buy you a cup of coffee or approach you at a conference.
Teach me what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody wants to do that.
Nobody wants that. And there's a lot of those people out there, and I still like to help people. But yeah, man, if you can add value and so that's actually how I got started. So I left so in 2018, I made 1.2 million in real estate, just sales by July. And I was like, you know what, I'm done. Like I have to start my multifamily business. I had been wanting to do it for a while, get out of sales and do multifamily. So I went to Rod's event, met Rod and Robert. And I said, look, I can raise a lot of money. I've been working with investors for years now in real estate. I said, let me just jump in one of your deals, be a fly on the wall, but I'll actually raise money for it. You don't have to pay me. And they didn't. And I raised some money, and it was the Dallas deal they did. It must have been 2019 or 2018. I think it was 2019. So I learned for a few months and then did that with another deal. Said, hey, just let me raise money. Let me just help you guys out. And it was like, they were like, okay, why? I'm like, well, you know what you're doing. I know how to raise money, but I don't know on the operation side what, I haven't operated a multifamily asset. So let me add value to you. And in turn, I'm going to learn a lot. And that's how I approach this business. And you can add value and learn a lot at the same time. But you got to add value first. You have to add value first.
And you have to deliver, right? So you said, hey, I can raise capital, right? But how many times on a deal when people are initially starting out, right? So if somebody's starting out and they're like, hey, we're going to allocate $1 million for you to capital raise or $500,000. And you're gung ho and you're like, yeah, I can raise $500,000. And then, come closing time, you're like, listen, I'm only at 200, right? Now you can't deliver as a capital raiser, and they're going to have to scramble to hire another capital raiser, or not hire, but basically bring on another partner, right? And to facilitate that 300,000. And then do you think that next time when they go to raise capital, they will come to you because you couldn't deliver? No, like if you couldn't deliver to Rob or Rod Khleif that time, right? He would never want to bring you in on another deal. You did it for free or you didn't get commission, right? But so he wouldn't want to do it again, but you did, which opens up more doors for you on future deals, more partnerships. And then it kind of just snowballs from there.
Yeah. And I'd even take it a step further. Like, all these people want to get paid. They want their cut if they're going to raise money and be a partner with you on a deal. I don't think that's the wrong approach. I think what you do is you say, okay, I don't know how to raise money. I've never raised money. And the funniest thing is when people come in and say, well, I've never raised money, but I think I could raise $1 million, $2 million. It's like, okay, but you've never done it. So how do you know that? And you're trying to negotiate with me to be part of this deal when you've never done anything. And so I know, just like you just said, I'm going to have to pick up your slack. So that's why I didn't do that. That's why the approach I said is, hey, lay me in on this deal, but don't pay me anything. Because
Yeah.
if I screw up, you're not having to cover for me because you weren't really planning on much from me anyways. But I'm going to raise money and see how much I could raise for you and do it the right way. And that way, there's no pressure on either of us. And I'm just adding a huge amount of value and learning myself at the same time.
Yeah, it's crazy if you think about it, right? Like usually what everybody's doing is when you do the opposite, that's usually when you make the biggest returns, right? You see the best results. And how many times, like even in the present day economy, right? So like people go in to a job before they even started and they're like, well, what are the benefits you're offering me? How many days
Yeah.
of holiday am I going to get? What are you offering me? And it's like, you haven't even started.
Yeah.
What time
Yeah.
can I clock out?
Yeah.
What do I get? A parking pass? What are the incentives? It's like, wow, it's kind
Yep.
of a reverse thing when people are already demanding for themselves. And it's like, listen, you want to bring people onto your company, right? That are going to help elevate everybody on the team, right?
Yep.
Everybody needs to be a role player. Everybody needs to know their position, right? So whether you're a capital raiser, whether you're an underwriter, whether you're a property manager, right? Everybody needs to know their role. And then if you're the Scottie Pippen or you're the Dennis Rodman or whatever have you, Steph Curry, everybody knows their role, and then you win championships. But when
Right.
people are out selfishly for themselves and like, hey, I can raise you $1 million. How much would you give me on this deal? It's like, well, how have you done this before? Do you have a track record? Like,
Yeah.
what your newsletter? How do you plan on doing it? It's like, oh, I have friends and family. It's like, okay, great. Everybody says they want to buy your product, but until you get $1, you haven't had one sale, right? So, like, especially in real estate, in your reputation, you raised you had $1.2 million in commission, right? And so you were able to do that because you had a good track record. You had trust within the industry and you were able to parlay that. But if you didn't have any trust and people didn't know or trust you, nobody would listen to this podcast. Nobody would give you money. You wouldn't be able to sell any real estate. And so people need to be leading with more value as opposed to gimme, 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 gimme.
Right. Yeah, I think it's and that's why there's less people successful in this industry than there could be, because everyone's looking at, it's a little bit of greed. And it's funny, I just had this guy that wanted a job and we were talking and he goes, I think 100,000 is about right a year. And I was like, whoa, like you have no experience. So, okay, so tell me why. It's like, well, I'm making this much right now and I want to make that much. I was like, okay, but why would I pay you 100,000 a year? Like, I like you and I think you could be an asset at the company, but, and so it was all about how much he needed for housing. He wanted to buy a nice house. And I was like, okay, so you want to make this much, but I have no idea why I should actually pay you that much. And it was kind of a wake up call. And he was like, okay, well, what do you want to pay me? I was like, honestly, I think with your experience, I was like, honestly, you're 65,000 with bonuses. I honestly, I don't see anybody paying you more than that. And then I'm going to mentor you and teach you how to raise money and teach you how to manage investors. So I think that's a pretty darn good deal. And he's like, well, that's less than I'm making now. I'm like, okay. If you can't see, future, it was all about what can I get right now instead of, hey, Sam's purchased 2,000 doors in the last 3 years. I can probably learn a lot from him. And here's my actual skill set that I have. And what is it equal to? There was none of that. It was all like, well, here's what I want to make.
For sure. And, even if you brought that guy on, right, it would just be about like his next paycheck. He doesn't want to have like equity within the properties, right? So if you said 65 with bonuses and you're thinking, okay, Sam has done this many deals within the past, 2 to 3, 4 years, his company has progressed, and could he do 5,000 units in the next 5 years, 3 years, right? Could he be at 10,000 units in the next 10 years? Oh, if I but then again, he probably doesn't understand the numbers. It's all about himself, right? So if he started thinking broader picture, right? Maybe he could work his way up to partner. You're a smaller firm, blah, 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 blah. These things, but he's thinking, no, I just want to, tit for tat. I'm making 100. I'm making 100 at Amazon, and I should be making 100 across every sector for every job, and I'm never going to take a pay cut. So
He's
Yeah.
not
I
even
mean,
making 100, by the way. He's making 70. So you wanted a
there you
$30,000.
go. So you didn't want to take a $5,000. You didn't want to take a $5,000 pay cut with equity with, an upside on the end. So, whatever.
It was interesting for sure. Well, hey, let's get back to you.
Yeah.
So you're in Thailand, you got married, you have a kid. Congrats. That's awesome. Living the dream. I've heard it's gorgeous over there. So
Yeah.
pretty cool. Um, so you started with Bigger Pockets, started a meetup, met some people. You got into multifamily. And then what are you doing now? Like, what is it that
Yeah.
like you're really passionate about moving forward now? Because multifamily's fun. You
Yeah.
had built a portfolio up with a company, but tell us about what you're doing right now.
Yeah. So, I had a podcast as well. It's no longer in syndication, right? It was called Real Estate Journeys. It was about 114 episodes. And I was going on other people's podcasts. People were pitching via my podcast. And I basically saw this whole process being kind of broken. And I was like, listen, I think I can create an agency that would basically help facilitate real estate investors, attracting more capital, getting more deal flow, et cetera. And so I created Elite Podcast Bookings in May of 2020 and, started reaching out to sponsors, capital raisers, and slowly over time, we started bringing more and more of those clients on. And we've been placing them on industry leading podcasts, such as your podcast as well, Rod Khalif's podcast, a couple entrepreneur podcasts. And over time, right, people become to like, know, and trust you, and you're developing a brand, which these things take time, just like it took you time to build 1.2 million in sales. And so over time of having consistency, people are able to attract more capital. And when they put out a newsletter or a deal offering and they raise $1 million within 2 or 3 weeks, it's because they've been building up their brand. And I listened to one of your podcast episodes that you had I think it was like your 2020 goals. And you guys are basically saying that capital is the lifeblood of real estate. And without that,
Right.
or you guys were equating it to like a patient or something, a patient with blood. And if they don't have the blood, then they basically die. Right.
Yep.
And so if you want to be a capital raiser and you want to be a sponsor, those are what you got to have. You got to have capital and you got to have deal flow if you want to be a successful capital raiser or a sponsor, right? And so when you're going on other people's podcasts, you're basically leveraging their platform and using their megaphone to amplify your message, which in turn brings more business to you, more deals, more investors, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, and I'd say an additional benefit from that. I mean, yes, you're putting yourself out there is huge, and you need that. The friendships and the connections and the things I've learned interviewing people on my podcast is cool. I mean,
Sure.
It's been really fun. I've interviewed some really stellar people. I mean, people like you who see a niche in the industry. Hey, there's this thing is needed really bad. Like I was just thinking while you're talking, I'm so inconsistent on my podcast guests. Like I have so much going on that I'll do like 5 interviews and then nothing for 7 weeks. I'm like, oh, I haven't released an episode in 2 weeks. Shit. And and I know there's a ton of podcasters like me who have so much going on, but they love their podcast. It's vital to their business that they should be using Elite Podcasts.
Yeah. And I mean, so people basically, let's say yourself, like you're saying, right? It's like how I was saying, like real estate's almost like a good old boys club, right? So there's almost like the analog world and then there's the digital world. So the analog would be like, hey, there's a meetup in Dallas. Like everybody sign up. Okay, let's put on our suit and ties. Let's go there. Let's shake hands and kiss the babies, which is necessary, right? There's some necessary face-to-face interaction. But if you want to go digital and you want to basically amplify your message, or the quickest way to create your brand and your company consistently over time, right? If you're going on podcasts, if you're going on 2 podcast episodes a month and you do that for 12 months, you're going on 24 different podcasts. Let's say you go on Whitney Sewell's podcast, which averages anywhere between 50,000 to like 100,000 downloads per episode. You've already reached out to that many people, which you couldn't have done at a conference, right? And podcasting is a very intimate experience. People are listening to it between their ears. they usually listen to the beginning and they'll listen to it all the way to the end. It's not like a song where you can jump in the middle and be like, oh yeah, like I really like this Drake song. Like this, I remember this in high school. It's like, no, you listen to the beginning, listen all the way to the end. And the demographics usually is a higher demographic, higher education. And if that's kind of the clients you're targeting, which are high net worth individuals or real estate investors, then podcasting is a great way to go about facilitating, bringing in and promoting your real estate business.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say I like what you said about the caliber of people listening to these podcasts, that they want to learn. They're out there ready to do stuff. And, you get some people that maybe are brand new and maybe don't have, or maybe don't have money to invest, but still the vast majority are people are looking to do deals. They're doing deals. They want to learn. They're working, towards a goal of doing a deal or investing in real estate. They're trying to decide who to invest with. So, yeah, I think podcasting is really cool because it's not like a TV show. It's not like a song where people are just watching for the entertainment. If they're listening to Whitney's podcast, or who, by the way, is an awesome guy, they're listening for an exact reason, a very specific reason. They want to learn, they want to invest, or they want to do a deal. And I think that's the cool part about podcasting. It's a very different crowd.
For sure. 100%.
So what do you do? Let's say that I come to you and I say, hey, Matthew, like I just admitted, my bookings are all over the place, sporadic and not consistent. So explain your service to us so that, 'cause I'm sure a lot of my friends who have podcasts will listen to this as well. What exactly do you do, and tell us how it works?
For sure. So let's take yourself, for example, right? So we basically sit down, have a consultation with you. We basically, learn about what your goals are as far as, what you're trying to do. Are you trying to raise capital? Are you a sponsor? Basically, where are you within the industry, right? And then from there, we basically take a look at your marketing funnel and we'd be like, so what are you doing to promote your business? And most people will be like, hey, I'm talking to friends, I'm talking to family. And I'd be like, okay, what lead generations do you have? Do you have call to actions? Do you have a newsletter, et cetera? And so we basically kind of look at your marketing for you. And then, if we basically sit down and say like, all right, have you been on podcasts before? Do you know what they do? Like, are you comfortable with them? And from there, we kind of, construct a way to go about basically attracting more capital within the podcast or with going on other people's podcasts. And then we would basically work on a call to action for you as well to help people get into your funnel, onto your newsletter. And that way you can curate them, right? So one thing that you want to do is, American Express says that you need 7 touch points before people take action. So as much as people might like you, or they might like me, if this is the first time they're hearing this, they're probably not going to give Sam money and they're probably not going to give me money, right? But if they hear me on 7 different podcasts, Whitney Sewell's, Rod Khleif's, LifeBridge Capital, blah, 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 et cetera, hear me on your podcast, or they listen to your podcast with consistently released episodes for a whole year in a row, every Monday at 7 p.m., right? It's like Pavlov's dog. They're just sitting there. They're waiting for it. They're anticipating it, right? And over consistency, over time, when those are coming out and people are basically, there's consistent message, that's when people will start to take action. That's when people are going to invest. But they're not going to be like, oh, and that's a problem that a lot of people run into too, is like, oh, like, who am I to be a sponsor? There's lots of sponsors. Who am I to go on a real estate podcast? Everybody's saying the same thing, right? Everybody's saying the same thing across every single platform, across every industry. But the reason why people invest with you, Sam, is because they trust you. They like you, know you, trust you. They like your story. They like your family. They like where you're from. They like your past returns, and they trust you. They trust you as opposed to a sponsor in New York. And once people resonate with your message and you're placed on podcasts and you're comfortable delivering your message, that's when you start to see the biggest results. But when you don't have consistency, you're basically going to fall apart by the wayside. And, what we touched on off air a little bit as far as like successful capital raisers is consistency, right? They're constantly trying to curate deals. They're constantly trying to network. And as soon as let's say you have a big network and something happens, you're able to quickly reach out to your network and say, hey, I'm trying to find a new lender, etc. Right? But if you aren't posting a newsletter consistently, if you're not constantly trying to network or networking, just you and I, right? Of going on, developing relationships like this. And, let's just say subtract the audience, like this will be a good way to, get in and talk to you and develop a future relationship. So you and I are already networking, subtract the audience, right?
Right.
And so if you're trying to raise capital or do deals and you're not networking, then your business is dying, right? And so this is one of the things that we help people with, is to constantly be networking, constantly reaching out, constantly basically doing all the middle work before you. Like you're saying, you have a lot of work to do. Why not just leave it to us? We can help facilitate all that and help you stay on the top of people's mind. And so you can attract more capital, deal flow, and be the man across the industry.
Yeah, I love it. And that's how I built my real estate business, is brand recognition. Talked about 7 touches. And in the book, it's called Millionaire Real Estate Agent. I can't remember who wrote it, but they talk about the system that you need to get brand recognition. And they say it's a lot more than 7 touches. And they say there's usually only, in someone's headspace, there's only room for 1 to 2, maybe 3 brands. So if you tried to name toothpaste right now, Colgate, Crest, I could
only think of Colgate. And then when you said, I was like Colgate, Crest.
Try toilet paper, like Charmin toilet paper. I can't.
Yeah, if you're thinking like sodas, like Pepsi Cola or Pepsi Coke, and I think like they own like half the industry anyway. So
yeah. So if you're trying to raise money, you're trying to be the number one, podcast servicing company like yourself, you got to be out there. And they say, it's the book I read, and that's why I really pushed hard in marketing back in the day to get those high numbers. You got to touch people 8 to 12 times a year, consistently. And before they'll even really start considering you one of those top 2 in their brain. So for realtors, how many realtors are out there saying, hey, I sold a house on Facebook? There's so many, it's just crazy. So as a realtor, I was Facebook, Instagram, everything, email, text, phone calls, newsletters, events. Like, I had to get in people's faces. And that's when my business started to build. And then with this money raising, I'm going to events, I'm holding events for my investors. We raced cars last July in Las Vegas. We're going to dinner in Vegas again this July. Traveling all over to visit them. And it's funny, a couple of my partners were like, dude, you're spending a lot of money visiting investors, basically, wining and dining. And I was like,
if you think about but if you think about it, right? So let's say, with capital raising, right, people are thinking initially about, we're talking about like instant gratification, right? So let's say whatever, how many touch points we say there are, 7, 12, 20, whatever it is, right? So now somebody decides to invest with you, and minimum investment usually for accredited investors is $50,000. So let's say somebody invests $50,000. You do one deal, you do a 2x equity multiple over 2-3 years, whatever you want to call it. And now you've 2x their money, right? They're happy with you. They like you. They like what they see. People want to be on the upward trajectory of like a tornado, right? They want to be on somebody on the come up. They don't want to be on the plane coming down, right? So they see Sam, he's doing more deals. He's presenting us with more deals. Yep. All right. Now they invest, they want to 1031 exchange. Okay. Now they take their $100,000. Now it's been 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years, and they've been an investor with you for that whole time. And now after 8 years, they're giving you $300,000, $400,000 a year because you're just providing a great service. You're making them money. You're leading with value. You're offering them an opportunity, and they're happy in return to give you their money, which they trust you, and preservation of their capital, right? And so with that, hey, you're off to the races, and now you're raising a lot more money. But when people think like initially like, oh, you're doing too much for them, but you're basically curating good relationships, which are going to provide for you, and they already like you, know you, and trust you, right? And so let's say you made a mistake of not even with their capital, but just, I don't know, email or, something, right? You have
Okay,
that
I've got
person.
I've got a really funny one for you.
Let's hear it.
We sent out these certificates. I don't have any in my office. Investment certificates. Complete failure on my part. So my intern, he's awesome, by the way. This isn't a dig on him, but he's misspelled a couple of their names on the investment certificate. Thank you for giving us $500,000 for Carousel or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then my assistant sent them out without me dating and signing them. So I had this blank, like I had a spot for my signature. I had a misspelled name. So these investors are just laughing, text me like, nice try, buddy. Like, thanks for the thought. And I was like, oh, that's so embarrassing.
Yeah.
But like, I've done a really good job with most of them, taking them to dinners, showing them I care. I do a weekly investor update where they can ask questions every Friday. So these high amount of touches and building relationships. There's one that was a little bit upset. And actually the worst part is that there was postage due. So she had to pay like 80 cents just to receive the damn misspelled, wrong investment.
They had to go pick it up 5 a.m. in the morning.
Dude, it was, but at the same time,
look, listen, you're gonna get
her money's doubled in the investments, and we do have good relationship with those people.
Yeah, but mistakes are gonna happen, right? And sometimes, like, let's just say whatever let's say you have a deal, and there's lots of investors. Sometimes there's hundreds of investors, possibly thousands of investors, right? So, you're always not going to get grade A premium. Oh my God, every investor, like they're my best friend. There might be some bad apples that get through the cracks, and then maybe they only invest with one deal with you, right? And usually, you probably don't want those people to be around with you for 8 years. Or let's say they try and stay with you for 8 years and they've been a bad apple for 4 or 5 years. And you're like, listen, I track so much capital. I don't need your money. Like, you're paying.
Yeah.
I don't want to work with you. Like, this is a mutual relationship. Just as much value as you get, I should get. And if I'm chasing you around worrying about postage for 85 cents when I'm bringing you, double your money, like, I apologize. And your other buddies or your other investors are like, hey, hey, good on you. You made a mistake. Ha ha ha. Right. But if you didn't have that interpersonal, relationship, right? Or we've all dealt with a company like that and the customer outreach, and you're just, oh, I hate you. Like, I'm unforgiving. Like, give me my money back. Like, whatever, dude. It's a piece of paper. We're happy. Bottom line, we doubled our money.
Right. If you look at what really raises money, it is the relationships.
For sure.
And I say this over and over again. I'm like, guys, like, I clicked send on the offering. You signed it so I know for sure you didn't read anything. Like, you're crazy.
Yeah, they didn't
way too much.
They didn't read the offering. They didn't read the PPM. They're just like, okay, breeze through it.
Sam's deal, like, cool. Yeah, here's our money.
Scary. Exactly. And let's say you're
dealing also
with
what you want if you're raising money.
Yeah, and let's say you're dealing with like a busy doctor, right? And it's like, hey, did you read the 115 pages that I sent you of legal jargon? Right. They basically just skim it, look at the returns. Okay, do I like the submarket? Does the property look pretty? Do I trust them? How maybe how is it done with their track record? Obviously, it's different for first-time investors as opposed to recurring investors. But right. You're 100% spot on. It's the relationship for sure.
Yeah, they basically what they've said to me and what I've learned is, do I know Sam? Do I like Sam? Can I trust him? And am I going to lose money? No, I'm not going to lose money. So I know him and like him and I can trust him. Okay, cool. And that's basically what they do. They kind of like the deal. Some investors, very few investors ask me a ton of questions about the deal. They want to know that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm honest. And that's honestly why we raise a ton of the money that we raise, or I do, is I've got a track record of being brutally honest and having integrity. And you want to know what's going on with the deal, I'll tell you exactly all the mistakes we've made or all the issues that have come up and what we're doing to fix them. Because that's what a good operator does. No one's perfect.
For sure.
So anyways, but you got to get that message out there. So back to your platform, marketing, touching the investors, getting out there and making sure they understand, that you have brand recognition. I think that's huge. And so um, I always like to kind of talk about the people side of things. So what has motivated you to build the company? What exciting goals do you have, or what's something exciting that you're working on? So we can get to know Matthew a little bit better, because Thailand's awesome. What you've done with your company is really cool. And I think you're spot on with what podcasters and money raisers like me need. But just to finish a little bit personal on the personal side, you and your wife and I don't even know, is it a boy, is it a girl that you have?
Well, so I have one boy who's in his terrible twos at the moment, and I'm gonna have a second child. We actually went to the doctor today, and our child is due in October, so I'm expecting a second boy. So, as far as on the life front is concerned, I'm very happy with the way things are going, and I enjoy being a father, and I think one of my missions, I believe, in my life is I want to basically raise two strong men, right? I want to teach them, be there for them, teach them from A to Z, and basically pass on all my tutelage, different that I didn't have necessarily as much growing up when I was a young buck. But, I think the world could use, some good, strong men who lead a right moral path, I guess I should say.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
So congrats, by the way, one in October coming.
Yeah.
And your little boy's 2 right now. So
yeah,
my little boy is 4. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. 4 and
so he never had terrible 2s. He had terrible 3s. So we got through the 2s and I was like, man, this kid's easy. And then he wanted to start doing more. Just 3s hit really hard. And now he's awesome. He's so much fun. Almost 5. He'll be 5 in September. So
and then my daughter's 8. When the terrible 3s happened, did you think 3 was going to be carry on for the rest of his life, or did you feel like it was going to pass?
He's such an easy kid still. He was a little bit crazy, a little bit angry and frustrated about communication and stuff. But honestly, he's the easiest kid ever. Like,
nice.
If you know Liam, he's like the sweetest little, he gives me hell at home. Like, he hits me and we wrestle, and he just wants to roughhouse with Dad all the time.
Yeah.
But the terrible 3s were just a couple fits here and there. But compared to my friends' kids, he's really easy.
See, that's what I'm hoping for. My son's like, angel 90% of the time, and then like he's at school and they're like, yeah, no, like he's great. We really like him. And I was like, he doesn't have like temper tantrums. Like, no, never. Now I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I always pick him up. I'm like, did he sleep today? And they're like, yeah, he did. Because if he doesn't sleep, it's like,
oh yeah, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, watch out, tornado for sure.
Well, that's awesome. You mentioned raising strong men and people, or raising your boys to have good morals and standards. And that's what I'm doing right now with my kids. That's been one of my goals. We had Heidi when she was in 2013, and she's 8, almost 9 now. Liam's 4, almost 5 now. And I'm a single dad. So right now they're upstairs waiting for me to finish this podcast. We're going to go make lunch and probably go to the park for our lunch break. And work with that, and so they can come and interrupt me and we can talk, can roughhouse for a minute. But they're going to understand what it is to work hard. And Heidi already, when she goes, I still sell like 1 or 2 houses a month. She'll go with me and I'll be like, all right, Heidi, take notes and tell these people why they should buy this house or why they shouldn't buy this house. So she'll take her little notebook and take notes. And
I love that.
She's been on work trips with me. Yeah. Networking events. She's went with me when I was building the 4plexes in Boise multiple times. And so my goal is to teach my kids how to work hard and be really good people. Every Thanksgiving, we try to find a couple of families to sponsor that don't have toys or won't have a Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas as well. We did Toys for Tots this last Christmas.
Mm.
and they got to walk around with toys, and it was driving them nuts at first. Like, oh, I want this toy, Dad. I'm like, buddy, sorry, you can't have that toy. There's a little boy that's going to that doesn't have any toys.
Yeah.
How many toys do you have, Liam? And he's like, oh, I have a lot of toys. I'm like, you have a shit ton of toys. Like,
Yeah.
Heidi, you
Yeah.
can't have that book. Like you. So it was interesting. Like it's been really fun as they get older, start having those learning experiences with them. We just cleaned out their closets, and I said, okay, we're gonna find some little boys and girls that need these toys. We're gonna give
Mm.
them like half your toys, and they were like, pissed off, angry for a
Mm.
few minutes, and then they started having fun. I'm like, oh, which toy, Liam, do you not play with as much? He's like, oh,
Mm.
I guess I could give that little boy this one. So I'm constantly looking for learning experiences, and it's been really fun as a dad to do that and teach them hard work, teach them to give and serve. And I'm glad that you've got that goal for yourself because I think that's awesome. I think a lot more parents want to have fun with their kids. They want to give their kids everything instead of teach them the type of people.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I've learned in my short stint from parenting and just reading books and whatnot is that one, you have to be there for your children. And two, you have to lead by example. Right. And so like how many times like we're like, oh, I don't want to be like my parents. And then the older you get, you realize you're exactly like your parent. Right.
Yeah.
So let's say your dad had an anger problem and then like you have let's say you have 50% of it left of an anger problem. And then you could see like your blood boiling and you're like, okay, like if I overreact in this scenario, like this is probably going to be the beginning of my son having whatever, like anger issues. Right. And so it's like, I find myself like, I'm like, okay, if I tell my son to eat vegetables, like I should be eating vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell my son he should be donating or getting rid of some of his toys, like dad should be leading by example and getting rid of some of his t-shirts. Right. Yeah. Because whenever you're younger, whatever age you were at, if you were told to do, you're like, well, you haven't done anything, right? Like you don't know how to do this math problem. You don't do this. Like, you want your gym trainer to be in peak optimal physical form. And you're like, yeah, dude, I'll do whatever. Like I'll look exactly like you. So, and I think if you're able to lead by example, right. And your children are very impressionable at a young age. If they see you working hard and they see you giving back and they see you, following the rules and they see you, doing X, Y, and Z, they're more likely to follow in your footsteps. And you, from everything that I've known and seen in the past, like you seem like a great gentleman. So I'm sure that your children will be a reflection of who you are.
I hope they're even better, but yeah,
there we go. That's what we can hope for.
That's exactly it. So, well, awesome, man. I'm glad we ended with that because it's always fun to not talk business and talk personal a little bit. I'd love to visit Thailand someday. I've had 3 or 4 buddies go, and they said it's amazing. So,
yeah, man,
jealous
of
where you live. That's awesome.
Yeah, come on out.
Well, thanks for being on the show, Matthew. Again, I'll have all the social media links, everything for your company. Make sure you send those over if you haven't already. But I appreciate you being on the show and talking about something a little bit different. Talking about kids and being a dad, and then also talking about outreach. How to add value to people. I think that was the best thing we talked about today, right? Your company, what you do is awesome, but I think the biggest value I heard today is add value. Don't ask. Don't try and see what you can take or get from people. Go add value and learn and that's the best way to go through life.
Yeah, man. Sam, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.